Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. How many of you speak English? Okay. All right. I'll do my best to go slowly for the others who don't. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. My name is Mike Tracy, and what we're going to talk about this morning is something that we face, or I faced, at least in my school, for many years, is the separation between classical saxophonists and jazz saxophonists. How many of you have experienced that, where it seems like all the classical guys hang out together and the jazz folks hang over here and there's no intermingling? We've had that, and that's understandable because sometimes we don't understand what the other ones are doing, and sometimes we feel threatened or we feel like we don't really know what they're doing. So what I tried to do many years ago, we had events like this as well as my school, and I tried to think about what would be a good topic to talk about to help bring this together, to help us enjoy each other and do what I enjoy doing, which is playing saxophone. Anybody know what that first song was? The name of it? Any idea? It's a very famous blues, not written by Duke Ellington, but written by his son, Mercer Ellington, entitled Things Ain't What They Used to Be. And so what I did right there was essentially play the melody, and then I improvised for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 choruses. Some of them went pretty well, some of it didn't go as well as I would like, and if I played it again, it would be very different, except what? The melody. But even that, I could phrase it differently. So what I tried to do was put together some type of document that would allow us to understand what each other side is doing. And I kept thinking, well, what do we have in common? What are some things that we have in common? We have to play in tune, right? Intonation's a big thing. We have the same technique. A C is a C, an A is an A. All these kinds of, a good reed. If we don't have a good reed, it doesn't matter what we play, right? It's just not going to work. So one of the things I tried to do was put together a document that we could look at so we could better understand where each one of us are coming from. And if you'd like to see this again after this week or weekend, You can go to my website, it'll be on there. But let me go to it. Come on, there we go. Can we all see that okay? Yeah. All right, so what I did was I started thinking about things, and I started asking my friends who were really accomplished saxophonists, whether they play classical music or jazz music, what do we have in common? What are we different? What can we learn from each other? So what I kind of figured out was I put together this little chart. The goal, playing musically regardless of the style. We're here to play music, specifically through the saxophone, right? Whether it's tenor, alto, soprano, baritone, but it can be done on piano, it can be done on trumpet, it doesn't matter. We're here to play music. That's our goal. That's the first thing we do. All right? The next thing is the classical side, the jazz side. Not better, not worse, just different. Intermingling, and it can cross over. So what I tried to say here, and some of these are just general statements. For example, what do we have to have in common? Sound. If you don't have a good sound, nobody wants to listen to us play. We have to really work on that. So we're working on it all the time. And it's a universal thing that we all have to know. So we have to have ear support, overtone work, long tones. Other than that, it can be very different. Different mouthpieces make a difference. You notice my mouthpiece? It's a metal mouthpiece. But if I had my alto here, it'd be a hard rubber mouthpiece. My soprano's a hard rubber. So the mouthpiece, they have mouthpieces outside. They all make a difference. But that's not the only thing. It's us too. So what do we do? The sound is very different depending upon the mouthpiece, the reed, the ligature, the setup. The next thing, our tone. Probably the first thing you noticed when I played, I hope, was my sound. You may like it, you may not like it, but that's the first thing we notice. When you hear me speak, when I hear you speak, the first thing we're going to notice is our sound and how that relates to us. So when we talk about tone, in fact, I would really appreciate some of my colleagues who are well-versed in different styles to help me with if they found anything I need to add or subtract from here. But for example, for a classical player, when I play classical music, because I went to school, there was no jazz study at the universities. You did that on your own. So I went through and I played all the pieces that you probably played up until a certain time. And I had to work on all these things as well. Strive for a pure tone, clear sound, control generally darker and warmer than what I would play on a tenor or alto playing in jazz. Typically smooth and connected. You get the idea. I put a list of things that typically describe what a classical player would do. A jazz player. My sound is my sound. I don't try to sound like Sonny Rollins or John Coltrane, although I would love to sound like that. But the thing is, it's my tone. I found that more classical players had a more generalized sound that they kept within the idiom. It fit the style of music. With us, we want it different. We want it to sound different than each other, more personalized. Less attention to connected sound. Typically imitates a master player. But that was idea of tone. So you can read this when you get the chance. Intonation. We got to play in tune. Not affiliated with a specific style or a way of playing. For a classical performer, when I was working at it, I wanted to make sure everything was perfectly in tune. When I played right now, it's certainly a concern, but not high on my priority list. I'm trusting myself when I played for so many years that I'm going to play in tune. But there are going to be times where I'm not. And I'm not going to let that overwhelm what I'm doing, because my goal is to play what I hear. Vibrato is another topic, a major topic. It's an expressive tool. We use it to be expressive. Some people use it very differently than others. When I was playing that blues, I used it at different times. Not at all. Just a little bit. So it may be more of a dead song, but if I play a tune like this, you see how I'm using it differently So when we play, when a jazz person plays, it's a whole different approach than when I played the Bozza aria or Ibir or something of that nature. It was a different type of way of approaching sound, having to control it. So I make sure that I keep those things in mind when I play. It's my way of bringing my personal connection to the music. The next one, dynamics. A lot of jazz players just play loud all the time. And I find that just as appalling as not using dynamics. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to control our dynamic expression as we play. These are, again, constants. Technique. We all work on technique. In fact, one of the things most of us do, I know that I do, when I start to practice, I start to get obsessed with playing certain things. For example, if I want to go through with the Rasher book, I don't know why that came in my head. I can work on that for hours because I want to get it smoother, I want to get it faster, I want to do it upside down, inside out. So what I end up doing, and we're going to talk about this afternoon about practicing, my personality is such that I end up taking one idea and I'll do it for hours. Any of you ever had that happen? Where you have one thing happen, next thing you know, you're doing the same thing over and over again. And you stop your practice, and next thing you know, it's an hour's been gone, and you've only practiced one thing. That ever happened to you? No? Yes? You know, things like I can do that all the time, just practicing patterns. Because that's another thing that distinguishes a classical player from what I studied and what I do now as a jazz player, is we have to work on language. Like I don't know Polish and some of you don't know English. But the language of what we use when we play is vitally important. So I have to work on the jazz language. And that was one of the reasons that I ceased becoming focused on classical saxophone and became more focused on jazz, because I could not do both of the languages justice. I couldn't play a classical piece and have the right sound anymore, or have the type of approach to it that I needed for the jazz person. Then the jazz was being compromised because I was trying to practice classical. So I had to make a decision. I had to go, okay, I really want to do this. I like this, but I really love this. So one of the things that I had to do was learn the language. And the language of a jazz player comes from what the gentleman was just showing here a second ago. He had Charlie Parker, he had Art Pepper on, who else? He had Cannonball. I wanted to learn how they spoke. Do you understand what I mean by that? I wanted to know how they approached the songs, how they approached the music, how they took what they did and made it become themselves, as opposed to me taking a piece of music that I have to interpret what somebody else wrote. That's a very big challenge too. But I wanted that. I wanted to find out how that worked. So learning the language is what made me decide that I had to become focused on one area and another. I don't know many people at all that can do both and do it really well. I know some, but not many. And it's like I really admire them because it takes a lot of skill and a lot of dedication to keep those two crafts together and make them healthy. I can think Tom Walsh, a student of mine, a friend of mine is like that. Another guy, Johan Eriksson. Some other people I know in the States are like this. Like, man, I don't see how you do it. How do you find the time? So that was one of the things I wanted to learn the language. Associated with language is articulation. One of the things that really messed me up when I was a classical saxophone player is I couldn't tongue fast enough. I couldn't tongue clean enough. It just didn't work out. And then when I became a saxophone player, a jazz player, guess what happened? Articulation messed me up again because I tongued too much. I articulated more often than I needed to. Am I speaking too quickly? Are we okay with this so far? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. And feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. So articulation is really important. One of the things that might be useful to share now is I'm reading a dissertation by a gentleman from Australia. And he did a great job as for his doctorate. And he took the music of Lester Young, Stan Getz, Dexter Gordon, and Wayne Shorter, and wanted to know how Lester Young influenced the other three. He did a great job. He transcribed. What do I mean by transcribing? Anybody know what that means to a jazz player? What does that mean? You're shaking your head.
You listen to the music and try to write it down.
Right, like he just did on Yardbird Suite. He was playing along with Charlie Parker on tenor. That was impressive. Yeah, you take a jazz player. We'll take a lot of time when we take somebody's solo, and instead of having it written out, we listen to it and we not necessarily write it down, but we memorize it. And we work on it like that. Well, he took solos by those four people, Lester Young, Stan Getz, Dexter Gordon, and Wayne Shorter, to see how they were similar or dissimilar from one another. And he did a great job showing ideas and all this kind of stuff, and also sound, how he influenced one. But one of the things that I'm going to mention when I write my report that I wish he'd gone more into depth was articulation. If you speak, and I'm going to use my language, if you speak English and you come from London, and you come from Dublin, and you come from Sydney, Australia, and you come from Boston, and you come from Texas, we're all speaking the same language, but it doesn't sound the same. Right? So what is the difference? Articulation, phrasing of it. So one of the things that I think that he should have covered in that dissertation, although it was 500 pages, so I'm not sure how much more he could write, but would have been articulation. And that's one of the biggest things that distinguishes a classical player from a jazz player. Sound, articulation, how they approach it. Like when I'm playing, let me play another song for you. How much did I tongue? Not a whole lot. I'm trying not to. I don't want to. I want it to be more smooth. Right there. I'm using my tongue more as a way to initiate the start of the sound, as opposed to going. I can't do it. Literally, I mean, if I practice, I can do it, but I don't want to practice that because it doesn't sound right to me. But if I was playing with another band, a jazz band, I'm doing it if I'm a solo on it. It's weird. I'm thinking about tonguing and how to do it or not do it so I can demonstrate for you. And sometimes that gets in the way. But a lot of times, I'm using my breath accent, or my breath, to make the distinction of when a note starts or stops. So all I want to say is articulation, along with sound, is a big distinguishing factor between a classical player and a jazz player. Not better, not worse, just different. Extended techniques. How many of you work on extended techniques? I still do that, and I can't do it as well as I'm sure some of my colleagues can do here, because it's not something that's part of what I do or what I listen to. But I marvel at people who can play altissimo really smoothly, who can do all these different sounds. They're really very interesting, because the saxophone is a unique instrument that can do these things. It's not as prevalent in the jazz world as in the classical world, but it is in the jazz world depending upon what style. Performance opportunities. I'm always looking to play. I'm sure you're looking to play too. But if I'm going to play, when I was doing classical music, if I wanted to do a recital tour, they put all these things together, and I think someone's going to talk about doing that tomorrow, right? Or today?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm certainly going to be curious to hear how to do that. Right now, I look for every chance to play. As a jazz player, I have many more opportunities than I did when I was a classical player. I play with the symphony. I've done pictures in exhibition. I've done bolero. I've done, what else? Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet on tenor. I've done all these different things. But I got to play once a year, maybe twice a year. If I did a recital, then I had to go out and had to find a place to do it. As a jazz player, it's still complicated, it's still difficult, but on the weekends, I play as a duo with a pianist or a guitarist. If I have a Brazilian band, we do that kind of stuff. So I have a little more variety and opportunity. So that's one of the things that really intrigued me. I wanted to play as much as I possibly could. I didn't want to be in a practice room, I wanted to play. And I love the interaction between people, the conversation between a jazz band. Repertoire. How do you keep all that music in your head? It's hard. You know, the pieces you work on. You work on a graduate recital. You might work on it for a semester, maybe longer, to work on all these pieces. For me, I'm working on tunes all the time. I'm trying to learn new songs. Now, it's very different. When I'm learning, like that last number, anybody know what that number was that I played?
Lady Bird.
Well, it's not Lady Bird.
But the line was by Dexter Gordon, the second line.
No, the line was by...
I mean, he played it, but maybe he didn't write it.
You're exactly right. The original song was Lady Bird. That was a tune on top of it called Half Nelson, which is the bebop line, more bebop oriented than Lady Bird. That's Lady Bird, but it's the same chord changes as Half Nelson. So there's a good example. I have to learn both of those so that I can play it. So for me to learn music, most of the songs that I'll learn will be 32 measures in length. Not all of them, but most of them. A song like Stella by Starlight, Know the You. A blues is 12 bars in length. Maybe a tune like this. Another one played by Dexter Gordon. You'll recognize this. Blue Bossa. So you have all these different songs I have to learn, but I learn the tune and I learn the chord progression, and I try to have in the back of my head famous recordings that I can refer off of when I'm playing. When I studied classical music, I would get the piece, I'd look at it, and then I would go find a recording to listen to someone else play it, and then I'm delving into what I need to do to learn. I would look at where the hardest places are, I would look for the ones I know I could play, and then I would do it that way. It's a very different approach to learning music. So when I go home and practice learning a song, I'll play the melody, and then I'm off. Then it's me. I'm making it up. That wasn't part of my regimen when I played classical music. I was working on, just to use, say the Glazunov. I'm working on that. It's going to take me a while to make sure I play all those lines smoothly. I make everything blend together. All that's important. It's just a different approach to practicing. So repertory was very different for me in both ways. And one of the things too, how many of you memorize much of the material that you work on, the solo pieces, classical pieces? Probably not a lot, right? Everything I do, I try to memorize. Because when I go somewhere, I don't know if I want to have music or not. Or if the band knows it. Do I know everything? Oh, of course not. There are thousands of tunes. And a good friend of mine, Jerry Coker, a great educator. Jerry, man, he knew so many tunes. Other people, pianists I know so many because they're playing all the time. So that's one of the big differences right there. The other one is transcribing. And this gentleman who is doing a dissertation transcribed solos by Lester Young, Dexter Gordon, Stan Getz, and Wayne Shorter. So he did what the young lady said. He listened to it. He wrote it down. I guarantee he slowed it down. I guarantee he made mistakes and he had to go back and fix them all the time. But he's trying to get inside of that person. One of the things I wish I had done when I was teaching classical music was to have, say for example, a fairling. We practice the fairlings. We do those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, or the Kargeller. Those are really hard etudes. I love to play those. What I should have done, which I would do now if I was going to teach, if I was teaching it, I would have a recording and have the student transcribe what was played before they practiced it. transcribe a failing. What's happening? Well, that's just the diminished scale. Or those are going up in thirds, or this is that, and this is this. And have them hear it first before they do what? Before they try to read it. Because transcribing is an amazing tool for you to hear not just what someone else is doing, but how for you to digest it, to make it your own. But transcribing a Fairling or a Carr-Gellert or say a Bosa piece, any one of those that are melodic, it's easy to transcribe it. It'll help you with your counting too. You got to figure out, oh, is that a 16th note? Is that a triplet? So something to think about. But transcribing is a big thing. Scale and chord practice. We all do that, right? I mean, out the wazoo. Practice scales, practice chords. We do all those kinds of things. One of the things that I found to be different is that I have to be able to apply them. How many of you practice scales every day? Come on, lie. Tell me a lie. You've got to practice scales every day. At least play through them. But what I do, say for example, I've been doing this lately. My reed's drying out. What is this song? What is that? Anybody know? So what? Miles Davis. Okay. So what is that song built on? Do you know the form? What's the form of that song? Anybody know? Every song has form. Come on. I'll give it to you. It's 32 bars in length. A, B, A. And the good thing, and the interesting thing about that song, this tune, is that the A sections are all in one key, E minor, for me on tenor. All right? Then it does what on the bridge? It goes up a half step, then it comes back down. So if I'm going to practice scales, all right, that's it. All right, I got that. But I got to be able to do. I'm trying to follow the form. I'm practicing my scales, but I'm not going. Or. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to apply them as I'm on a solo. So when I practice scales these days, or I have a student come in, I'll say, let's pick a key. And we'll say, okay, how about, and they know that I'm not going to let them do the easy keys. So they're going to say, okay, let's do A flat. Oh, nice. I hate A flat. So we're going to do A flat, and we're going to play it in what key? Major, minor, dominant, diminished? What do you want to do with it? And we pick a quality, and we just start communicating back and forth, practicing playing scales together, improvising as we go along. So I find that when I was playing classical music and when I taught, I didn't do that with my students. It was a big mistake. We could have utilized that. Improvising is not the sole purview of a jazz player. Everybody can improvise. I'm improvising right now. I don't have a script. I don't know what I want to say. You can do this, all right? Memorization, like I said, everything I'm doing I try to have from memory. I don't take, I have an iPad with songs on it, and most of that is because I forget. As you get older, trust me about this, you forget stuff. You got parents, right? Grandparents. Older I get, the more I forget. So I need to have like a little reminder. Oh, it's in that key. Yeah. Or it's in this. But I try to have as much under my fingers and in my head as I possibly can. Do I fail? Of course I do. But I work at it to do as little as that as possible. Listening. How many of you listen to music every day? Come on, raise your hands. Really? That sounds like a bogus statement. Listening. It's not. We could spend days talking about how to listen. And I don't mean, is this a major third or a minor third? But how to listen to someone play, whether it's a symphony orchestra or a big band whether it's a soloist playing an unaccompanied piece or something with a pianist, about how to listen to what they're doing, and how they're connecting as they play. We say we listen. Just because we have ears and we can hear doesn't mean we listen. You understand what I'm saying here? Just because we have eyes doesn't mean we see. Yes?
Yeah, but I think it's quite hard in contemporary times because if you go to a supermarket and you listen, you hear different type of music, but we have too much music, so also our perception is just,
Oh, I know. He's exactly right. There's a lot of garbage going on. It's filling our heads. They're filling time up. But that's our job, to be able to distinguish that, to be able to make that go away. Yeah, I go in the grocery store. I hear it too. I hear these bad Beatle tunes playing by a string quartet. I'm going, no. But what that does for me? Sometimes it triggers the original recording in my head, or it triggers something else, or I just ignore it. But listening is such a vital thing, and that's one of the things too that I hope that whoever thinks of themselves as a jazz player or a classical player does not take time to listen to what the other person is playing or saying. Because you can learn everything from other people. And I think it's great that you're here listening to me right now. You don't have to listen to this at all. You can tune it off and go away. But I think it's nice that you want to be curious about what's going on. You're here to learn about saxophone. So listening is about, and you know what, in the rest of the world, if we listen to us, maybe there'd be fewer wars too. We talk about things. So it's a big vital thing that we need to do as musicians, to be able to be aware and to care enough to listen to somebody else. Self-expression. Again, like I mentioned, improvisation is not the sole purview of a jazz player. You can do this too. In fact, I want to do something right now. I want to say something. I've been going to these different places, and as I've gotten older, I'm becoming more comfortable with playing by myself, like I just did. Years ago, when I first met you, I would never have played a tune like that on my own. I don't know why. I wouldn't have thought of doing it. Now I do it, and when I go places, I ask my musician friends that I meet if they'll play with me, if we'll have a conversation. So I would like, before we leave, Hans, if you want to do it, or somebody else like to do it, where we just get together, I put the machine on, and we just start playing. And we start listening to each other, and we start communicating. Doesn't have to be playing a tune. Doesn't have to be anything. All we're doing is we're making sound on saxophone, and we're interacting. I challenge you to do that. It's really great fun to get out of your comfort zone. It's really easy to be in a comfort zone to where you do what you do over and over and over again. But I think as I've gotten older, like I said, it's more and more fun for me to live outside of that and try different things with different people. So I'd like to do that. If you want to do something like that, we just play. I already asked Magdalena to do it. And it's really amazing what comes up because you're listening and you're interacting. That's one of the things that I encourage all my students to do. How many of you have ever composed a piece? Yeah, and I know myself, when I write something, it's never good enough. I always hate it when I'm done with it. But it really helps you to start to discover things within yourself about what you hear, what you like, or what you're searching for. And again, it probably it's going to go across styles. Another thing, practice. I found my practicing when I was younger, like most of you. I would go in a practice room and say, I got to play 4 hours. It was dictated by how much time, not dictated by how much I got done. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, 4 hours. All right, I got 4 hours from now. And you start playing, and when I walk out of my practice room, if I was honest with myself, I'd realize I didn't get a whole lot accomplished. I put in the time. You know what I mean? I did the muscle work, I did all that, but what did I accomplish? What new was done? Or what did I reinforce that I didn't do before? Not as much as I'd like. One of the things about this dissertation, I keep coming back to that because I just read it on the plane. This guy, he did all this transcribing, all this listening, all this analysis of these 4 players, and then what he did, which was very clever, I wish I'd thought of this. He had recordings of himself when he was an undergraduate playing some of these same songs. Then when he did his graduate degree, he played some of the same songs later after he did all the study, to hear how his playing was influenced by what he had done. That was very insightful that he did that. One of the things that, if some of you are jazz players, you'll appreciate this, and if not, you'll appreciate it anyway. He did what was called layered transcription. What he did, what that means is he'd have 4 staves, let's say. The top staff would have the original melody, all right? How, as it's in what's called a real book. That's a book, it's kind of like a Bible of jazz tunes. It has the original melody here. The next one, Lester Young's approach to playing that same melody, right beneath it. Beneath that, Stan Getz's approach to playing the same melody. So you see what I'm getting at? He did these 4 things, and here's the original. Here's how these other 3 people interpreted what was the original. It's pretty cool how close they were, how much they were away from that, and then it showed how they settled on it. This was very insightful. So one of the things I encourage you to do is think about your practicing. We'll talk about that this afternoon, about some thoughts I have on that. But how I approached practicing when I was in school as a classical player, I would do it very different now. It's much different now, just because I'm different. Any questions you might have or comments? I'd love to have some interaction with you. Yeah?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If it's too personal, just let me know. But I just wanted to ask if you've ever experienced burnout or like moments of creative block in your career, and if so, how did you overcome it?
Come on, we're all human. We all have that. I mean, seriously, that's not a personal question at all. I thought you were going to ask something else. Much more. No, yeah, we all get burned out. There are times I don't want to play. I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 in 10 days. Yeah, there's time in my life where it's like, man, I want to keep doing this. Yeah, because I love doing it. In fact, it's great. What I'd love to do the most is play my horn and interact with people and be in a foreign country. I'm doing all 3 at the same time. That's great. But yeah, there's times when I don't want to play. There's times when I can remember playing somewhere and I came home and I just wanted to throw my horn away. That I thought I sucked when I played. And I probably did. And I knew it. And what that meant is like I needed to work harder. But yeah, there's times I do that. Now, not so much, because I'm a little kinder to myself. And I realize that there's only so much you can do. And I bet everybody in this room has a real competitive spark in them, or you wouldn't be here. What I mean by that is you want to play better and better, and too often we end up comparing ourselves to somebody else. That is a game you're going to lose. I had to learn that the hard way. When I say that, it's when you're playing and someone's playing a piece you're working on. Oh, I can do that better. Oh, I don't do that well. You do those comparisons. That's a losing game. So when I start going there, I try to shut it off. Like the music in the grocery store. I try to turn it on my head. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, those things happen. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you approach practice, in practice, the balance between the time constraint of having some time to practice or trying to get the hours in, and the other thing that is getting the work, right? Because sometimes when we actually try to focus on a topic or on something, it comes out like you showed before, like we're practicing same thing, and like hour after like burnout, like in terms of practice, and what to do that.
That's what we'll talk about this afternoon for sure, but I'll give you a little bit of thought on that. Life is about balance. I mean, that's what it is. It's about balance. We're talking about a gentleman that we all kind of know, so he's so focused he never stops practicing. Man, I admire that. But there's more to life for me than that. I mean, I play saxophone because I love it, and I'll die with it in my hands probably. But is it me? No. So you have to kind of balance what is there. That has to do with your practicing too. What times do you do? And too often, we don't set goals for ourselves. If we set a goal, then say, okay, what is it going to take me to get there? For example, coming here to Poland from where I live, I had to go, I had to make these stops, I had to do these things. And if you're going to practice and learn a specific task, whether it's music or something else, you try to set the path up. and balancing time and balancing energy. Sometimes you have more time than others. Like right now, I'm retired from school, and I thought I'd have more time to do things. Well, I got less time. I'm doing all these other things that I didn't have time for before. I love photography. I love working on the website. And so it's me balancing time. And also, it's one of the things we'll talk about this afternoon, is when it's best for you. All of us are creatures of habit. For example, for me practicing, I used to never play in the mornings. I just didn't do it. I would play jobs at night. So I was more comfortable playing from, say, 8 o'clock at night to 2 in the morning. You can't do that if you live in an apartment, right? I have a house, I have a studio in the basement, I can do that. But so now, as I've gotten older and work with students at school, I had to get up at 8, I had to practice, you know. So I turn my clock around. But what I'm trying to get at is you figure out what works best for you at that time in your life. And don't beat yourself up for it if it's changing as you move through life, because it will change. We'll talk more about this afternoon. Anything else? Okay.
What are your thoughts on the contemporary music, jazz education? Like, what kind of subjects would you rather erase from the list, and what kind of subjects you could put on the list? Because for example, you mentioned composing, and I think that's something you can choose when you go on masters, for example, in Poland. And we should have that class from the beginning of our jazz education. It's as important as playing a scale, I think.
But why does someone have to make it on your degree to do it?
Because that's how the system works.
But that's not how you work. That's not how I work. I'm not a composer. I'm a decomposer. I take people's music and I redo it. But if I want, one of the things that if you knew me, you would know this. No one really told me what to do. They would give me suggestions and I would do it. And if I wanted to compose, whether it was on my degree or not, I would do it. Just because someone's telling you not to. And it doesn't have to be a master curve. It doesn't have to be like a symphony. It could be 12-bar blues. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just like, think about getting out of what you're stuck in. Most of us get stuck. We're told this and do that, and we end up doing it because it's easy. Think outside the box. What would I change? Wow. Right now, everything is so different than when I started the program at school. When I started the university's jazz program, there was nothing, zero. Saxophone, I told some of the people last night, they didn't want us because we played saxophone. Excuse my language, that pissed me off. So I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it, agreed to be here. All right. So times have changed since then, and the degree, if I would do it differently, there's so much that you need to know that's about being entrepreneurial, how to find work, how to find people who will write music for you, how to put a band together, how to put your stuff on the web, how to think as young people think. Again, I don't know how old you are, but my guess is you could be my son. And you think differently than you because your experiences are different. How do you utilize those in the world that you want to work in? How does that affect your music? I don't know. So class-wise, you need to be able to experience what's currently happening. I don't mean contemporary music necessarily, but contemporary things that are going on within our society. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kinda, maybe, not. And one of the things that we did at school too that I thought was really important was jazz was kind of like in a corner. And we weren't integrated or embraced by the rest of the school because it didn't work easily. Well, one of the things that a lot of kids coming into school who were 18, 19, 20, they wanted to be music educators, but they also wanted to play jazz. Well, why should that be exclusive? Why can't I be a quality band director or orchestra director and not know how to play jazz too? So, without getting into great detail, I helped develop a degree that they could do jazz study as well as classical study as well as doing music education. I had to fight people to do this because they didn't want to do it. Because how can we do that? Let the kid decide. Let the young person who wants to do this, let them decide. Here's the roadblocks. Am I willing to do that? Does that make sense? Like, I don't wanna be the one telling you what to do. I wanna hear what you wanna do and how we can make that work. Turn it around. So, I think that's an important thing for us to do as educators, is to listen, not just talk. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the sound, because like one of the discrepancies that you put on the chart between the classical and the jazz was like the classical is predominantly a couple of schools, right?
Yeah, that's how I saw it. That's how I saw it. You know, like when I was growing up, you had Sigurd Rascher. He
Yeah.
sounded a certain way. Marcel Millet, he sounded a certain way. Then in the States, you had Hemke, you had Jean Rousseau. You had different people, and they had their people, the students pretty much, and they kind of sounded alike. You know, all the Rascher people, excuse me, they all sounded alike. And Marcel Millet, the French, they had that special sound there. And the jazz people, they didn't. There was people who sound like Charlie Parker, but after a while, they became more free. There's Cannonball, I want to sound like that. So it became more fractured.
Yeah, but in terms of like calling it the schools, that's at least an impression that I got from, say, experiencing the American jazz education system online, because I've never been there.
Mm-hmm.
Is like there are also a couple of schools like Allard and Lehman and whatever. And
Yeah.
Sort of. So, what is your like personal thought in terms of developing sound? Because I mean, sometimes it's gonna struggle right with the teacher that you have. It's just gonna resonate with how you're gonna learn, right? And sometimes
I think so.
maybe
Well,
not, yeah.
first off, I've had this from classical teachers, but not from jazz teachers. They don't try to change my sound.
Mhm.
The classical guys did. Only because they were right. It was too loud, it was too brash, you know, it was wrong. So I needed to do that. I studied with Lehman. Dave's a good friend of mine. And he has a book called Developing a Personal Sound. I've been around people like I said, Jerry Coker, who others? Just great saxophone players. We just had a guy at school, Joel Fromm. You know that name?
Yeah.
He's fantastic. I mean, I didn't know him. And he lives like 300 miles from me now, or not even that far. Joel is amazing. And then Charles McPherson was at school recently. I mean, I can put a whole list. I mean, what I did as director is who do I want to have here? Who do I want to hang out and have dinner with? James Moody, Michael Brecker, you know, you go down the list, Paquito was, I mean, I got to, so the thing is that when you talk about your sound, when I studied with Dave, he didn't say anything about my sound. It wasn't about that, it was something else. It wasn't about the sound. I think what happens is you listen to a lot of people and you start to identify with their tone. If I had to say I wanted to sound like somebody, it'd be like Hank Mobley. It'd be like Coltrane playing the ballad song, the ballad, you know, record. Yeah, you have favorites. We all have favorites, and we lean toward that. Then after a while, I play alto and tenor and soprano too. That affects my sound on tenor. When I play alto, I want to sound like Cannonball. I want that big, robust sound. Am I going to sound like Cannonball? No. And to answer your question back there about not wanting to play some days, there's some days I don't want to play. I go home, but I know there's that little thing in your shoulder. You got to practice mine. Over here, no, don't practice. No, you got to practice. So when I go in my studio, I have a studio in my basement, and all my walls are CDs. There's little cases. I know if I want to practice, I go over there and I pick this CD, this 4 or 5 CDs. I put it on, and as soon as I hear it, I got to play. All right? They're not saxophone players. One's Wes Montgomery, the guitar player. I just love that way it feels. Another one is Miles. I love that. Or Chet Baker. So those things, those sound affects my sound on saxophone. And they're not saxophone players. Again, listening. How does it affect you? I love how a violinist or a flautist, how they use vibrato to make their sound more intentional. I love, like Andrea Bocelli. He was just, last year I took my wife, she loves him, and I love it too. And if I could play tenor the way he sings, that'd be cool. I'd be happy. So I took her to the concert. He was in town, literally in Louisville last week. We couldn't go because she had COVID. But I listened to him as well as I would listen to Coltrane. Because I love the sound. I love how they take the sound and shape it. I love how they use their own vibrato, their approach to dynamics, and all those things that make the sound their own. I'm going, wow, how can I use that in my own playing? So that's that's what I do with that. And for students, for me, about sound, our system, I don't know how it is in Poland. Do you have, is it 4 years undergraduate?
Three.
Three and 2 masters?
Yes.
Ours is 4, and it's usually 5, because there's so much stuff, because you don't have to do stuff like chemistry or biology and stuff, do you? Yeah, we gotta do that stuff. And I believe in that. I believe that people should be diversified, because not everybody is gonna be a musician, make a living doing music, but that's a different topic. So it's 4 years, and then 2 years for a master's after that. If you came to my studio, and you were a freshman, we would negotiate a contract on what you would do for that year. What I need to know what you know. Okay, we need to know this, this, and this, and I'll show that this afternoon too about things. But it's about transcribing. So you play alto or tenor or tenor, okay? So you come in, maybe the first year I'm going to say, okay, I want you to listen to Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins. I want you to transcribe Body and Soul by Coleman Hawkins. That's a solo everybody should know, whether you're a classical player or a jazz player. It was important because he made the saxophone at that time, in 1939, an instrument that everybody wanted to listen to and respected. He did something that Marcel Millet and Rasher and all them couldn't do, the way he did it. Not better, not worse, just he did it. But that's an important solo. Then next semester, maybe you'll do a solo by, just think a minute, Don Bias. So each semester, those 8 semesters, I'm going to take you through the history of jazz saxophone. And every time when you do it, you have to play the transcription with the recording and sound just like that person. Okay? I don't necessarily want you to sound like Coleman Hawkins, but when you're playing that Body and Soul with him, you're going to sound like Coleman Hawkins. So by the time you get to be a junior or senior, you might be playing something by Chris Potter or Joel Fromm, or certainly you'll have done Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Dexter Gordon and Joe Henderson, who's my favorite. You'll have gone through the history of jazz saxophone, and through that journey, you will establish your own sound. I'm never going to sound like Joe Henderson. Joe was great. I would go to concert. Joe and he taught with us, and I'm as close as I am to him right there. And Joe has this, you hear him on recording, big sound, right? He used a C-star mouthpiece and 2 microphones. A microphone up here and a microphone there. But it was just, the sound he got was just amazing. But it wasn't like hearing something like Liebman, who's screaming at me. Right? Totally different. I don't want to dictate what you do. I want you to experience it, and then you decide. You decide the direction. So, yeah, for me to say, okay, I want you to play like Dexter Gordon. Well, that's commendable, but Dexter played like Dexter. Learn, he was just talking about the Lady Bird recording. If you don't know that one, that's fantastic. Dexter plays the stink out of it. And I had a student not too long ago, a very precocious student. He played alto and tenor. He was one of the most amazing students I've ever had. He could play anything, any tempo. He didn't know what he was doing. He did not know. And he also played lead trumpet. And he can improvise, and he's a better improviser on trumpet than on saxophone. He was a freak. He learned that solo, the Dexter Gordon solo, and other ones, but that's what they do. I've had other students who come in and would pick a Coltrane thing and work on it. They'll spend hours learning. They don't sound like Coltrane, but they've absorbed all the information. Good question. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, something quickly speaking. Shortly, you said that this page is possible to download.
Yeah. Well, let me show you. Yeah, for sure. Anything is, well, first off.
And other question
Yeah.
is coming about what you said just now is about language. I'm speaking about English. Language spoken by American jazz player. When you speak about the sound, Coltrane sound, it means the tone, or
Yes.
it means including also his phrasing, his ideas. When you say
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. No, when I'm talking about a sound, I'm talking about if you could divorce everything out.
When you read something, what's
I'm just talking about the sound. I'm not talking about the phrasing, of course, and what they play all influence the sound, but it's our voice.
Okay.
Like your voice is your unique quality.
Okay.
That's what I mean by that. But everything else, of course, enforces it. So this is on, you can download this. Let me show you where you get it. This is, there you go. That's my current website. All right, when you go to my website, it's going to be very different in like about 2 weeks. I'm redoing everything. This served me really well for years, but like the gentleman asked back there, what would I do differently? I had to become hipper. This young lady who's my web designer said, "No, you gotta do this, this, and this." And I'll show you some other things too. But I wanted to consolidate so it was easier to find. So you go to my website, michaeltracy.com. All right. You go to Ed Materials, Education. Okay. You click on that. Oh, here we go. And if you want to find this specific, which makes it complicated, it'll be simpler on the new website. You go down here, and here it is, Masterclass Handouts, Saxophone Classical Jazz Considerations. Also there, suggested materials. This is just a whole bunch of books. You're going to notice even in there, Guy Lacour's in there, you got Closeiller's in there. It's all kind of books that I've used. Fairling, Cargill, I mentioned, the Omni books, these are all there. And this is probably needs to be updated because I did that a while back. Then also on there, jazz repertory. Here's one that might be interesting for some of you who are classical players, master jazz saxophone players. Is it download yet? Come on. It's a history, a brief history of, well, where is it? Okay. Well, trust me, it's there.
Yes. Open.
Oh, it's right down here.
Yeah.
There we go. I use a Mac, so I'm not used to it. Okay. These are like links to things on the web. I went through and just put links. So some of them probably work or don't work. Forgive me. Okay, how do I get back? I'll get back maybe this way. There we go. Other thing, one I did too. Oh, here's something. I'll do this afternoon. This is what's called the senior college barrier. What it meant is, this is what by the time you're 4th semester in our jazz program, you have to know all of this from memory. These are songs you gotta know, but here's all the scales. For saxophone, we're gonna do it 1 octave, and then we're gonna do it full range. All right. 2-5-1 patterns, again, language. Be able to arpeggiate all these chords, be able to improvise on these tunes. This is all there. You can look at it on your own time. Something I did if I had my alto, if I could have brought it with me, one of the things I did was I did the master class, and I did and you're not going to recognize this when you see it. I said, what is this song? And we start playing, and I'm improvising on top of this chord progression, which happens to be the Bozari. And I just improvised on top of it. Now, I didn't necessarily refer to the melody, but I used the chord progression as a place of starting how to play. And I went through and I analyzed it, and that's what, I don't think Boza thought this way, but that's how it came out in my language. All right, and I used that to improvise on. That's on there too. It's I think it's an E flat in concert. Other things here, for some of you, here's talking about transcribing. I'm probably going way over, I'm sorry. At one of the Aebersol camps, we have like camps in the summer. And there was probably 150 saxophone players, and there were 20 or 30 teachers. People who were like myself, teach at a university. Other ones like Jim Snydero or Gary Campbell or Eric Alexander, who are professionals playing all the time. Questions that used to always come up. Mouthpieces, all that junk. All right, I'll show you something or two. But what to transcribe? Where do I start? It's like going into the grocery store when you're hungry. You know what I mean by that? You go in there and you start picking everything off the shelves, even though you don't need it, right? Where do you start to transcribe? Who do you start with first? What do you do? It was a great question, so it got me thinking, okay, let me do this. I want to contact every saxophone player of quality that I know, all right, who are teachers. And what I did is I asked them the same question. What would you give your first semester student to start on the first semester? What would you give them to transcribe? How would you do it? And what would be the next transcription? What they did, not only did they do that, it was great, they trusted me, but they also gave me all this information about transcribing. So here's what it talks about, general recommendations. You can transcribe just the melody. What is this melody that I'm playing? Anybody know what that is? It's a very famous song. Stardust by Hoagie Carmichael. That's part of learning the language, learning all the songs. I hated that song when I was a kid. I freaking hated that song. Because everybody made us play it at dances. I didn't want to play that. My dad goes, I don't want to learn that song, Dad. Now as I've gotten older, I love that song because it's tricky. It's got all kind of unusual quirks in the song. It's very expressive. I love that part of it. And then I do this with it. That was the kid D flat. I transpose it. So everything I learned, I try to transpose at least in 1 or 2 keys, if not all 12 keys. Is that frustrating? Yeah. That's where my practice time goes. So this, getting back to transcription, transcribe a melody like that, or a simple melody. You can do all kinds. There's all kind of great recommendations here. They're not mine. There are these other people. And it goes through, talks about being able to identify major artist sound. All those kind of things. Sense of swing. It's really excellent. General artists to transcribe. Miles Davis. Transcribing So What is really not that difficult. That solo. It's a great solo. But it goes through doing all that, and then you can see all the stuff on here, it's suggestions. And these are all the people that gave me the information. Here are the solos. They're a list of the people, and these are the solos they would recommend. Not many people recommended the same solo. Many people did something I would never expect. It's all there. You can have that. It's free. All right? Under transcription. Something else I just mentioned too about questions that always come up, saxophone equipment. All right? I did the same thing. When people come that I know, I would ask them, what do you play on? What's your instrument? What's your mouthpiece? What's your reed? What's your ligature? What shoes you wear? What kind of coat? No, I'm kidding. But all this is on there. And it's all, I don't know how accurate it is now because some of these people, like all of us, change. But it's there for you to use. I know we're way over time.
Like, for example, for Jerry Bergozzi, it should be very, you should put a lot of information there.
Yeah, Jerry changes all the time. He's a great guy. No, but the whole idea is to show you there's a lot of similarities. A lot of people play this horn. This is an old Mark 6. This is a great horn. I have 2 of them. I'm very fortunate. But a lot of people use the same reeds or you see similarities. That's what you want to look for. There are people who do different things that are out of the, so you look for that too. But it's just to give you an idea. I don't want to spend time talking about it. Just look at this. All right, any questions before we wrap it up? I really apologize for going long, but like I said, there's things I love to do, which is meet new people, be in a different country, play saxophone, and teach. So I do it all 4 at one time. Any other questions? I can't be that good. Can't be. So please feel free, look at the website. In fact, I can't do it on this one. The new website will be very different looking, but it'll have the same information on it, but it'll be condensed down. So you'll see saxophone, and then you open that up, and then all the things for saxophone. Because on this ed site, go back, please. There we go. It goes on down, and here's all things about, here's about record labels, here's about practice progressions, practice routine. These are different, for example, there's a tune analysis on things, there's useful patterns, thing called the Crimea River lick. It's a lick that you're used to, and I applied it to, let's go to Audible Ease. And there it is, as a way of practicing that idea and developing it so you can use it in your solos. All this is there, you're welcome to it. All right? And I'll be here another couple days, right? You're welcome to ask me any questions you want. And I'm looking forward to hearing everybody play, because I'm hearing you warm up, and it's really great hearing different kinds of music. Who's playing tonight? You're playing tonight? Hans, you playing tonight?
Tomorrow.
You're playing tonight?
Tonight.
With the guitar player?
No, this time.
Ah, I love that recording. So I'm looking forward to hearing new music and listening to you play. Any other questions before we go? No? Well, thank you for being so attentive.